Incidentally, when you come to check yourself on self-reliance, you may need some help from other people. You may need some help from your wife, or your husband, or your closest friend, or somebody who knows you real well. You may think you have self-reliance, but do you know how you can tell about how much self-reliance you have? Would you be interested in knowing how you can check that very accurately?
Yeah.
All right, go back up there to number 1 and carefully evaluate your definite major purpose and see just how big that is. Or if you have a definite major purpose, and if you don't have one, or if it's not outstanding and above anything that you've attained up to the present, then you don't have very much self-reliance, and you should grade very low on that. If you have the proper amount of self-reliance, you'll step your definite major purpose up way beyond anything you have ever achieved before, and you'll become determined to attain it. Number 5, self-discipline sufficient to ensure mastery of the head and the heart and to sustain one's motives until they are realized. Where and when do you need self-discipline most, do you think? When you're on the way up and when everything's rosy and going well and you're succeeding? Is that when you need it? I thought you'd call me on that one. That's right. You need self-discipline when the going is hard, when the outlook is not favorable. What kind of self-discipline do you need at that point? Why, you need discipline over your mind to the extent that you know where you're going, you know that you have a right to go there, and you know that you're determined to go there regardless of how hard the going may be or how much opposition you may meet with. And you'll need at least enough self-discipline to sustain you through the period when the going is hard instead of quitting or complaining. And number 6, persistence based on the will to win. Do you know how many times the average person has to fail before he quits or decides he wants to do something else? Once. Don't you think you're generous? Once. Did you ever hear of the fellow who fails before he starts because he knows that there's no use of starting because he knows he can't do a thing? Did you ever hear of him? Well, that cuts it down below 1. You see? And would you be interested in knowing that the vast majority of people fail before they start? They actually never make a start. They think of things that they might do, but they never do anything about it. And did you know also that a vast majority of the people, even though they do start, at the first opposition they quit or allow themselves to be diverted over to something else? I wonder, it just occurs to me to ask a question. I wonder if you who have been here close to me and where we've taken our hair down and talking frankly, I wonder if you know what my outstanding asset it happens to be.
Never give up.
Will to win. Well, yeah, you're getting hot. I have persistence and the will to win, and also the self-discipline with which to stick to a thing all the harder when the going is the hardest. Now, that is my outstanding quality. It always has been. It always will be. And I want to tell you, without those traits, I never would have completed this philosophy. I never would have been able to have it introduced as widely as it has been, and I wouldn't be standing here talking to you tonight. And what about that trait? Is that something you're born with, or is it something that you can acquire? Well, if you couldn't acquire it, there'd be no use of talking about this lesson, would there? Certainly you can acquire it. And it's not very difficult at that. What is it that causes a person to be persistent, by the way?
Motive.
Yes, motive. Burning desire. Do you know what a burning desire is?
Yes.
Burning desire, or back of a motive, is what makes people persistent, isn't it? A burning desire back of a motive. I never think of persistence and a burning desire that I don't think of my courtship. I remember that I put more persistence and more burning desire back of my courtship than anything else that I ever went into in my life. And I want to tell you, without that, I don't think you get very far in a courtship. Well, don't you think you could transmute that emotion over to something else, putting it back of your business or your profession or your job, and have just as much emotional feeling about attaining success in your job as you could about selling yourself to the one of your choice? Don't you think you could do that? You know what that word transmute means, by the way? Do you? What does it mean? Fine.
Redirect.
Fine. Marvelous.
Redirect.
Have you ever tried it on anything or anybody?
Yes.
Marvelous. Marvelous. If you haven't tried it, start trying it. The next time you feel moody or discouraged, try to change that over into an emotion of courage and faith. You see what a marvelous thing happens to you. You'll change the whole chemistry of your whole brain and your whole body. And you'll be much more effective. And number 7 is a well-developed faculty of the imagination, controlled and directed. Do you think those last words there are important?
Yes.
Yes, an imagination not controlled and directed might be very dangerous. I once made a survey, made an analysis of all of the men in the federal penitentiaries of the United States. I did that for the Department of Justice. And you'll be interested in knowing that the majority of the men in the penitentiary were there because they had too much imagination. But it was not controlled and directed in a constructive direction. Now, imagination is a marvelous thing, but if you don't have it under control and if you don't direct it to definite ends, constructive ends, it may be very dangerous to you. And number 8, the habit of forming definite and prompt decisions. By the way, do you do that? Do you form definite and prompt decisions when you have all of the facts in hand with which to make decisions?
Yes.
Well, I think some of you are just a little bit too modest. Well, seriously, friends, if you do not have the habit of making decisions promptly and definitely, clear-cut decisions, when all of the facts are in, you're loafing on the job, you're procrastinating, and you're destroying this very vital thing called personal initiative. One of the finest places to start practicing personal initiative is to learn to make decisions firmly and definitely and quickly once you have all of the facts available. Now, I'm not talking about snap judgments. I'm not talking about opinions or snap judgments based upon half-baked evidence. I'm talking about facts, all of the facts on a given subject, which are not in your hands and available. You should then do something with those facts. You should make up your mind exactly what you're going to do and not dilly-dally around, as so many people do. Because if you do that, first thing you know, you will be in the habit of dilly-dallying around in connection with everything. In other words, you will not be a person who acts upon his own personal initiative.